I'm Dr. Pamela Ruig. I hold the David J. Ellis Chair in Large Animal Clinical Sciences and Antimicrobial Resistance. And today in this brief video, I'm going to be discussing a few safety protocols and practices for handling milk samples that are submitted for culture. Now, the reason I'm bringing up this topic today is you've probably heard that some states and some herds in the United States are experiencing an outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza. Now, this virus is shed in milk, and milk is considered a route of transmission. There's a lot we don't know about this particular virus, but there are concerns that the virus is potentially infective to people. So today, with that in mind, I want to briefly review some steps that you can take in your culture labs, either on farm or in veterinary clinics, in order to minimize risks of infecting or exposure to potentially infected milk. These are really simple steps. The first one is probably the most important, and that step is everyone handling milk samples for culture should be aware that that milk is potentially infective, and they should handle that milk carefully to minimize their exposure. The way we minimize exposure is we can use some simple personal protective equipment. I know on many on-farm culture labs, we haven't really used a lot of these things, but today with these potential risks from HPAI, we should be thinking about it. These simple PPE devices would include the use of safety glasses to protect milk from splashing into your eye, gloves, nitrile gloves usually when you're handling milk samples to prevent contamination of hands, and for many people they may want to consider wearing a mask to prevent milk from splashing into their mouths. Those are really simple practices that we can do on a farm to minimize exposure to any sort of pathogen that may be present in milk. And then after the culture is set up, we also have to think about how do we dispose of that milk sample. In past years, we were very casual with this. We would often just throw them in the trash or perhaps put them down the drain. But I would recommend today that we use some simple practices to disinfect that milk before we dispose of it. And that's easier to do than it seems. The easiest way to disinfect milk samples submitted for culturing is to put bleach in it. And the ratio is 1 part bleach, 10 parts milk. Let that set for 10 minutes before you dispose of it in any way. Now, this outbreak with HPAI in dairy cattle is an emerging disease. There's a lot we don't know about it. But I would encourage you, because we don't know these things, to take these precautions. And I'd also encourage you that there's going to be lots of new information come out, so work with your local veterinarian to make sure you're on top of these issues.